I'm sure you all have heard of Lomi before, and if not, Lomi is a countertop composter created by Pila. It's like their secondary brand. And it is designed to be able to help everybody compost no matter their home life. And what I mean is you can compost right here on your countertop without needing a yard. Big downside, of course, is that it is very expensive, so it's obviously not very accessible in that way. But I do like how they're trying to make composting accessible to people who live in small spaces. Okay, so ignore my eco-bricking mess. I want to give you a quick overview of Lomi before we actually jump into today's video. The biggest critique I see a lot of people have, and rightfully so, is that Lomi uses a lot of energy, and we'll dive into it more later, but it uses less energy than a refrigerator. So if you're gonna get mad at Lomi for their energy usage, get mad at me for my refrigerator too. But anyway, this is all it is. It looks, I don't know if it looks that big. Does it look that big? I don't think it does. Here's the actual bucket. This part's also heavy. I don't think this would even be disability friendly. Can I even get this out of here? Oh, a little stuck. So this bucket, quite heavy. It's all metal, very heavy duty. I probably need to replace my filter, but you fill it up and then it reduces, you can't even see it. Here it is way down in there. It reduces it to a fraction of what it was, and it is ready to go to be used on your plants or just straight into your garden. So as I've said, it's relatively easy to use. It uses very little energy. It makes composting accessible, but is it greenwashing? That's what we're about to find out today. I've done a lot of digging. I've emailed them about some questions because, spoiler alert, their website was not very clear. It was quite vague. What a lot of people have come to agree on is that surely this giant piece of tech can't be good for the environment, right? But did the benefits outweigh the cost? Are the cost worth it in general? Let's discuss. If you missed my full video on food waste, I just talked about it last week. You can check it out up here after this video, or before if you want, but I'm going to cover a few stats briefly. Every day in the US, the equivalent of 1 pound of food per person is wasted, which is equivalent to about 30 to 40% of our food supply, as well as accounting for nearly a quarter of all of the materials that we throw away and end up in the landfill. Of course, this isn't just food waste from consumers, this is food waste from restaurants, farmers, grocery stores, etc. That being said, it does equate to about $1,500 per family of 4 or $375 per person. So not only is it a huge, strain on the environment, it's also a strain on your wallet. But in short, food waste is bad for the environment because of methane emissions as well as other wasted resources like water, fertilizer, space, manpower, and so forth. So when we send food to the landfill and there's no oxygen there to help break it down, it creates methane, which is 80 times more potent than CO2. Estimates show that we could cut our global greenhouse gas emissions by 6 to 8% if we quit wasting food, and in the US alone, our food waste is equivalent to 32.6 million cars. Now you see why Lomi wants to solve this problem. Composting, if you didn't know, is the process of turning organic matter back into soil. And this can easily be done in any yard with little to no maintenance. Of course, this all depends on the quality of fertilizer that you want to get from your compost bin, but if you're like me and you're just trying to prevent food waste from going to the landfill, you really can just set it and forget it, and it'll do its thing. Even in the desert, it has taken me a while. We've been trying to compost for like almost 2 years now, and it's finally starting to break down. And this is just personal analysis, but I feel like with the growth of our cities and our urban areas and the destruction of our green spaces, composting has become less and less common. Not to mention, people have less time to create spaces for themselves, like a garden or a flower bed or something like that. So there's not really a need for us to create our own fertilizer out of food waste. So that when a lot of us do compost, we don't even have a use for it. So what I'm going to do when I move here in a couple months is I'm going to try to give my compost to a local farm. I live near a couple farms. I'm going to see if they want it. Now, sure, some cities do have composting pickup for those of us who don't have a yard to compost in. And this is also great because then they actually do something with that compost instead of mine just sitting in my backyard waiting for me to give it to someone else. Hopefully. And you also might be able to find a community garden or a community composting area where you can drop yours off. But again, this does not account for everyone. So Lomi saw this opportunity to bring composting to more households, especially households who don't have compost pickup, who don't have yards, who don't have gardens to do something with their compost. They make it easy, smell-free, relatively energy efficient, but it's also really expensive. But that's not the point of today's video. I do want to talk a bit more about eco-ableism, not in just like ableism in the disability sense, but ableism in like a monetary sense. I said that weird. So if you want to hear more about that, let me know down below. So now that we have seen the benefits of composting, let's now talk about the resources that it takes to create a Lomi. So Lomi is made in a Lomi manufacturing facility in China, and this factory is B Corp certified as well as carbon neutral. So those are some great things starting at the beginning. That's not the beginning of the supply chain, probably halfway up the supply chain. That does unfortunately mean that they do have to then ship their Lomis from China all the way to their warehouses in the US and then ship them out to everybody who orders them. So if you also live in Asia, it's just going to go to the US and then back to Asia, or from the US all the way to Europe. It could be a lot of emissions, and These things are decently heavy. As I already talked about, the Lomi weighs around 19 to 20 pounds, which is about 9 kilograms. And I did some rough calculations. It was hard to find like an exact number for like, if I ship a box that's this weight and this dimensions from China to the US, and I don't even know where their warehouse is, I don't even know where their factory is in China, it was very hard to get an exact calculation of like the carbon footprint of shipping a Lomi. But here's a quick snapshot of some calculations from Tree Nation based off of some 1-ton freight. You can do with that what you will. If you are more of a math whiz than I, you can probably do some calculations and let us know down below, but I didn't feel like straining my brain today. Sorry. Moving on to what Lomi is made out of. I was very disappointed with this section on their website. All of it says is, Lomi is made from recyclable plastic and metal. Cool. I'm glad that it can be recycled. Hopefully. I don't like this claim too because all too often plastic is not recyclable or recycled. It's typically is recyclable but not recycled. So even if you recycle tech, even if you take your Lomi to a local tech drop-off center, they'll strip it of the precious metals and other stuff that's valuable for recycling, but the plastic's likely going to end up in the landfill because plastic is not a valuable recycling system. The good news is Lomi does have their own take-back program where they say they will recycle their Lomis responsibly. But unfortunately, again, their website is so vague, and I think this is why people get greenwashy vibes from them. Hey, no, please don't do, please don't do that. Do you want to come say hi? Come here, I'll pick you up. You can say hi. Anyway, we can't actually see how they're recycling it, where they're recycling it, and so forth. I think it would also be great to see them made from recycled materials and not virgin plastic and metal. And I'm still also curious to see if any of their Lomis have actually even been recycled because this product is so new. It's probably come out within the last 2 years or so. So I really hope people aren't already returning them for recycling. They should be lasting longer than 2 years. I also found it really frustrating that they didn't specify what types of metal are used, where they're harvested, how they're extracted, if other precious metals like copper and lithium ion and cobalt are used. I think that's more for like high-tech stuff like phones and EV batteries, but you never know. And since they didn't specify, we don't know. So I reached out to them. As of filming this, like right here, right now, I don't have a response yet. So I'll see you in the future in just a second with a response. Also, something on their website talks about carbon offsetting. They're like, hey, through our main brand Pila, we carbon offset Lomis so that Lomis outweigh their cost. And I'm like, that's really cool. But again, their website doesn't state how they're carbon offsetting. Are they planting trees? Are they doing something else? Where are these trees being planted if they're planting trees? Like, are they just planting them in like a palm oil farm? I don't know. Though, even if they didn't carbon offset, here are some stats from their website that talk about how long it would take for Lomi to offset itself in your own home. Now let's talk about energy usage. I think this is people's biggest critique, which is curious because it's a relatively small contraption. But anyway, the Lomi uses 60 kilowatt hours per 100 cycles. And that is less energy than an Energy Star approved refrigerator would use. Not to mention the benefits of running Lomi for 100 cycles equals about 220 pounds of food waste diverted from the landfill and 18 pounds of methane emissions avoided. Okay, it's been a few weeks and I realized there were some other questions that I didn't quite answer about the Lomi, so let's dive into those. I think a lot of people's biggest question besides is it actually eco-friendly is, does the soil actually work? Is it actually nutrient-dense soil that I can actually use on my plants? And the answer is yes and no. There are 3 different settings. They all work differently. They all produce different qualities of soil. So first we have the express mode. This works for general cooked and raw foods. This is the mode that you can put anything into there that is actually compostable. This will get you the fastest results and use the least amount of energy. So this mode takes about 3 to 5 hours, which is really quick for compost. And this can be added to your compost bin, like your actual compost bin, or just kept in there for your next Lomi cycle. You can also add it to existing soil or throw it away. And we will get to the throwing away bit in a minute. The next mode is the Lomi approved mode. This is the only mode that you can actually put bioplastics into. They recommend a ratio of 1 to 10, so 10 parts like food and browns and stuff and 1 part bioplastics. You don't want to put an entire batch of bioplastics in there. That probably won't work out. And the same goes for this mode is once it's done, you can add this to existing soil, to your compost, or throw it away. The first 2 modes we've talked about aren't actually nutrient-dense soil that you can use on its own. But the third mode, the grow mode, is actually where you get nutrient-dense soil. This is meant for only fruits and vegetables, and of course some browns, but no meat, no cooked products, no bioplastics. This uses the lowest heat setting in order to preserve all the nutrients in your fruits and vegetables, and it also takes the longest amount of time, but even then it takes like 24 hours tops. It's still a very quick cycle, in terms of composting. So with this one, you can of course, again, add it to existing soil to your compost or use it as soil in itself. So in summary, of course, you can add any of these to existing soil, but you're gonna get the best results from actually growing stuff from the grow mode, hence the name. Now let's backtrack. I talked about throwing away the Lomi dirt. Why would you do that? Isn't that defeating the whole purpose? No, it's actually not. This is because not everybody has a compost bin, not everybody has commercial compost pickup, which again is why I'm even recommending the Lomi to those types of people in the first place, for those people who don't have that stuff. And if you don't have that stuff, and if you don't have compost, you probably also don't have a yard or a space to grow plants. You might have like a few houseplants you can put some grow mode dirt into, but ultimately you're probably not going to have that much space for a bunch of random soil. You could give it to friends if you have that option, give it to a local farm maybe, but the landfill is really not actually that bad of an option. And again, we talk more about that in last week's video about food waste. Since this food is already broken down, when it is sent to the landfill, it won't produce any methane. Maybe like a fraction, but it's gonna produce way less methane than sending like a whole tomato, a whole pumpkin, a whole watermelon to the landfill if it's already broken down first. Is this the best option? Probably not. Again, if you can find someone to give your soil to, that's great. But if you live in an apartment, you don't have access to compost, you don't have access to a garden, you don't have access to plants, using a Lomi, condensing all of that stuff, breaking it down in your home and then sending it to the landfill is probably the best thing that you can do if you don't have access to any of these other options. So why did I get the Lomi? You're probably wondering. I do have a backyard compost for now. As of recording this video, as of you seeing this video, I will probably only have access to that compost for like another week or two. I am moving into an RV for 6 months or so, which means I'm not going to have access to curbside anything. I'm not going to have access to an actual compost bin, which is why we got the Lomi, so that we could use it while we're in the RV to still reduce our emissions, reduce our food waste as well, keep our RV smelling fresh and not have like rotting banana peels in our trash all the time, and of course reduce our emissions if I didn't already say that. So stay tuned for my full thoughts on using a Lomi exclusively for 6 months to see how I like it, to see if I still recommend it after all that time. Now let's move on to the answers I got from Lomi. The answers. I did receive a few emails back. I will throw up some photos and read the email traffic through with you. I was not impressed with their answers. I'm still waiting on more answers. It's been weeks. So let's just go ahead and get into it. Okay, so I first emailed them on January 4th. I didn't hear back from them for a full week. And so by that point, I had said to them, hey, just circling back to see if I could get an answer on these for my upcoming video, because I did disclose to them like, hey, I'm trying to make a video about Lomi and I want to include as much information as possible. They finally responded back to me on January 13th. This is all that they say. Thanks so much for reaching out. I have some links and details to help with your questions. These links I have already read. These links do not answer my questions, which is why I asked those questions in the first place. We are always looking for new ways to source better materials. At this time, Lomi is made from plastic and metal. We are looking into using more recycled materials in the future, but with all the efforts we make, the units are actually carbon negative when you start using them and carbon neutral when they arrive to you. Which again, great, but that still doesn't answer my question on how are they actually carbon offsetting. So I said, again, I had already read those sources. I am still not getting the information I was asking about. So I ask again, how do you carbon offset your Lomis? I found the section about what Lomi is made out of, but it is extremely vague. What type of plastic is used? What type of metal is used? And where is it mined? Any efforts to use recycled materials in the future, etc., etc. Someone else got back to me, so I replied to them immediately on January 13th as well. They took another week and a half to reply back again. Oh my gosh, no, 2 weeks. They took another 2 weeks to answer again. Anyway, apologies for the delayed response. Sure, carbon offsetting is done at a company-wide level for us, so this includes Lomi and Pila. You can refine. Did I actually click on this link? I don't think I did. So this is live reaction. You can find more of the specifics on the offset program here. Let's click on it and see what we learn. Okay, offset. Pila invested in projects outside of their value chain to compensate for all of their measured carbon emissions. This step supports their climate neutrality designation and enables Pila to take responsibility for historical emissions that can be reduced. That was not in English. How? Again, no one's answering my question. How are they doing this? Maybe these little question marks? Avoided reforestation? Still not saying how they reduce their emissions. Anyway, back to the email. I need to link in with our team for some of the more detailed information you're requesting on materials used in the Lomi, but we'll let you know once we have a response on this. The bucket is made from aluminum and the grinder is made from stainless steel. Cool. Probably not recycled. Probably not mined from ethical sources. It just rarely is. I'm not like accusing Lomi because I think Lomi is a bad company. I don't think there's a responsible, environmentally friendly way to mine brand new metals. I'm not very educated on that topic, so if you know more about that, definitely let me know. And again, blah, 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 we're looking for more sustainable materials to use, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, so I followed up again. This was just a couple days ago from when I'm recording this. and I say, I still don't have an answer about carbon offsetting. I understand this through Pila, but how is carbon offsetting done? Tree planting, where is it done, etc. I look forward to hearing from you about the rest and about the materials soon. So that's where we left off a few days ago with Lomi, but I do need to get this video edited and published. So that's where we're gonna leave it for now. If I hear back from them, I will definitely make a follow-up, definitely in the form of a short form video, like a shorts. So stay tuned for my shorts, subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss those posts. But once I do have enough information, maybe I'll tag it along on my like 6-month using Lomi exclusively to compost video. If they answer my questions by then, I'll give them 6 whole months to do so. I'll put their responses in that video. I think that's a good idea. If you would like to see the video sooner, of course, let me know your thoughts down below. And now that you have all of that information about Lomi, let me know your thoughts. Do you still think it's greenwashing? Would you personally use one? Again, I'm beating a dead horse. You do not have to use a Lomi to be eco-friendly. If you have other methods to compost, which there are so many more ways to compost that are free, that are not this expensive, that are super, super easy. Composting is so easy. If you're just intimidated that you think it's hard, it's not. You really just set it and forget it. It's not that difficult. But if you're in a situation like me where you're not gonna have access to curbside composting or a backyard compost, would you consider using one? And even if not, even if you're not in the boat where you think you're gonna use one, I still wanna know from all of you, do you think Lomi is greenwashing or not? Am I being biased in thinking that it's not greenwashing if you're the target audience? Or am I still off base on that assumption? All of that being said, what do I think about Lomi? I don't think Lomi is greenwashing, and here's why. I have a full video on greenwashing if you would like to see it. I don't think they made this product out of malicious intent or to trick anybody. They're not also out there being like, you need to buy Lomi to be eco-friendly. This is the only way you can compost. They're not saying that. What they're saying is, this is a great way to compost. If you don't have access to curbside recycling, you don't have a yard, which is a lot of people in the United States. Of course, it's still not accessible in the sense that it costs a lot of money. And now I also don't think that it is the best composting solution. I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all for anything in any aspect of the zero waste movement. I still do think that backyard composting and curbside composting are the most efficient, but I feel like I just need to keep reiterating this. It's not available and accessible to everybody. But those options are better in the sense that they do require a lot less energy and resources. And of course, they're so much cheaper. But that being said, I do think Lomi is doing exactly what their website is saying, with the exception of the vagueness. I appreciate that they are open about their shipping from halfway across the world. I like that they made it energy efficient. And at the end of the day, food waste is a massive problem that we are dealing with. And if you haven't checked out my full food waste video, you definitely need to check it out up here, because we really talk about how it's not just methane, but it's also the water that's wasted, the fertilizer that's wasted, the money that's wasted, the electricity and the gasoline and the other fuel that is wasted by creating food waste. And our landfills are also running out of space, and if you want to learn more about that, you can check out this video. But at the end of the day, we need more food waste solutions. If you don't like Lomi and you personally still think it's greenwashing, you need to be writing to your governments. I still am too. Write to your national government, to your state government, to your city government about mandating composting, building a composting facility, which obviously isn't very eco-friendly either, making curbside composting mandatory and available for everybody. Now that I thought about that, maybe I need to do a full video on curbside composting about how, if that's even eco-friendly, because it doesn't sound like it now that I've talked about like those other things. The best way truly is backyard composting. Not everybody has access to a yard. I am running on a loop, beating the dead horse. Lomi is far from perfect. Far from perfect. They are not very open on their website, which is a shame, but I don't think it's greenwashing, just based on the definition of greenwashing. And again, just so no one misconstrues my information, my thoughts, this happens more on Instagram and TikTok than on YouTube, but just to cover all my bases, I'm not asking anybody to go out and buy a Lomi. If you want one, cool. You can shop with the link down below that actually supports me. But again, I think this is a last case scenario for food waste. Use your backyard, use your curbside, use share waste, reach out to your local farmers, find a friend who composts. There are so many other options. This is a last case scenario, which it's an expensive one. But I think what Lomi is doing is better than sending food waste to the landfill. And I would love to hear your thoughts down below, especially if you disagree. I would love to have a civil discussion about it. I also have a full video on how you can actually build yourself a compost bin completely for free, and I did this as a renter. So if you have your own space, even if it's a really tiny small yard, you can check out this video and learn how to build a compost bin for free. And you can check out my friend Compost Fairy on TikTok. Her info is linked down below. She talks about all sorts of things from bokashi composting, actual composting, vermicomposting, so many different ways everybody can compost no matter where they live or what their home life looks like. You can also hop on sites like OfferUp and Facebook Marketplace to find yourself a nicer compost bin. If you're like my mom, she just built a compost bin out of like 3 what do you call those things? Those like wooden things that you set boxes on top of? Pallets. She just stuck some pallets on the ground, called it a day, has a really good compost pile. It's thriving. And of course, like I already said, you can check out Share Waste to find someone who's composting near you. I appreciate your time, especially if you made it all the way to the end. Again, if you have any thoughts on Lomi yourself, you have any thoughts on composting, if you have any questions about composting, I want to make more composting content this year. Definitely leave your composting questions down below so I can cover them in the future. And if you have any more brands around this topic that you want me to kind of bust the myths around, let me know. I did one in, I think it was in December. Yes, it was in December. It's January 4th right now, me recording this. Of course it was in December. I did a video in December kind of busting the myths around laundry sheets, like laundry detergent sheets. Those are actually greenwashing, I found out. And then a brand that I want to cover in the future is Thrive Market and Misfits Markets, talking about how they actually probably aren't helping reduce food waste and kind of uncovering that scandal, if you will. But I want to make this a new series, hopefully do one like every month or every 2 months, about talking about some of these scandalous zero waste brands, for lack of a better word, and actually talk about, are they greenwashing, are they not, and so forth. So again, thank you if you found any value in this. I'd really appreciate a thumbs up, and if you shared it with others. And if you're new here, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. I talk about all sorts of things zero waste, focusing on free, easy, and fun ways to live low waste. Again, thank you for your time. I appreciate it. I will see you next week, and until then, remember that your small actions have a big impact in the long run. Bye, guys. If you missed my full... I didn't think it was recording. Oh. Yeah, I want to start this in the kitchen. And it is designed to help every... Oh my gosh. After I set up my iPad. Oh no. Where'd it go? But at the end of the day, we need...